Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to SF Commons. We're very delighted and we're very excited to bring this show tonight to you. We have Nick Brana, a young visionary who was the national coordinator for Bernie Sanders' campaign. You would think that the 2016 election is over. Well, it's just the beginning. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a serious, world-changing phenomenon that's happening all throughout the country. It's the development of a people's party. And Nick Brana, this young gentleman, is here tonight to join us to bring to you what is going to happen from now till 2020 and beyond. But before we bring him on, let's see what happened in the last Convergence Conference in Washington, D.C. Hello, Nick. Welcome to SF Commons. Welcome to San Francisco. How are you?
Hi, Myrna. I'm doing well, and thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Oh, thank you so much. And I love the fact that that conference sounds so exciting, and that has been in the making for a few years now, right?
We began just in February,
Oh my
draft
God.
Party for People's Party,
Uh-huh,
yeah,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
and just in 7 months, we've grown to this national movement with chapters across the country and
Right, right.
50,000 supporters calling on Bernie to start a new party.
Well, okay, talk to us about what gave you this whole idea that, we should start a People's Party.
Well, after the results of the general election, one of the most important things that the 2016 general election taught us is that neoliberalism, the kind of neoliberalism that Hillary Clinton represented and the Democrats represent, is no longer, enough to defeat Republicans. And the American people have kind of reached their tolerance for voting for the lesser evil.
Right,
And
right,
so
right.
Americans were given this choice between, one person who represented the epitome of the establishment, Hillary Clinton, and then another person who, as offensive as he was, represented some kind of change and escape from the system. And people are so fed up that they took that. And so what we're saying now is that the only thing that can defeat that can defeat right-wing populism, the kind of authoritarianism that Trump represents, is an authentic People's Party that stands for all of the things that Bernie Sanders ran on the campaign,
Right.
but that the Democratic Party doesn't.
Okay, let's talk about statistics, right? Okay, I read that as far as stats on parties, that today independents are approximately 45% now of the voters, and that by 2020 we're looking at that number increasing to 50% of the electorate, and that the Democratic Party is what, at 36%? Please try to clarify. And then the Republicans are even lower, and that 60% of the American population think we should have a third party, right? So could you elaborate on the stats?
Yes, it's amazing the level of consensus that's developed around this. And so 45%, like you said, of Americans are now call themselves independent. And for contrast, only 28% of Americans call themselves Democrats, and only 28% call themselves Republicans. And just like you said, Gallup predicts that it will be 50% of Americans will call themselves independents by 2020. And um, so the number of independents just dwarfs the number of Democrats, by double digits.
Right.
And on top of that, you have the fact that Gallup just came out this week with their annual poll where they ask about third-party attitudes, and a record number of Americans are now calling for a major third party. 61% are calling for major third party. Only 34% are satisfied. Only about a third are satisfied with the major two parties.
Right.
So it's reached that is the highest that Gallup has ever recorded. So it's a record number of people now calling for the creation of a major third party. And one of the things that I find even most amazing is when you break down those statistics.
Right.
You look at how many Democrats and Republicans are of those calling for a third party. You find that half of the people who call themselves Democrats want a third party. And so even half Democratic
That's incredible.
Party, half of the voters are saying, you know what, I want something else. And it shows you that they're really only there because they feel trapped in that party.
Right.
And that's why we're out to give them an alternative that actually represents them.
Exactly. Now let's go back to what happened and how we got here. And you've been out in the trenches. You're all over the country talking to people about the real situations, the real predicaments.
Well, these people were amazed by Bernie Sanders and how quickly he grew and the way in which he took off and his campaign took off.
Right.
But really, Bernie Sanders is the culmination of trends that have been developing for more than a decade now.
Exactly.
And so those stats that you referenced earlier about party affiliation,
right.
Party affiliation used to be kind of in the mid to high 30s for both the Democrats and Republicans. And over the past about 15 years, both of the parties have dissolved into independence. And both
right.
of them have lost tens of millions of supporters who've become independents. And so what you've seen is this growing ocean of independence that gets larger and larger and larger
right.
of people who say, we're not represented by either of the major two parties. And when that's happened before in our history,
right.
As it has in other occasions, then it creates the space for a third party, for people who say that I no longer feel like these two parties speak for me. And, basically there is now space for us to create something that represents people on Medicare for all, free public college, getting money out of politics, reducing inequality, breaking up the banks, all of those things that Bernie Sanders ran on, and now we have that opportunity.
And the timing is so perfect in that you're now harnessing this energy and the pent-up frustration that people have, right? Because we forget that Barack Obama won on the same basis, on the same ground, right? Hope and change. At that time, people are already feeling like, yeah, we need change. And then, of course, we know what happened there. So it's now it's, no, we really need some serious change. So you were in what parts of the country do you think really signify or capture the essence, of this poverty and the suffering that the American people face?
Well, I think that's such a good point that you bring up, that even as far back as 2008,
right.
people were attracted to that impression, right. To that kind of campaign. So when they voted for Barack Obama, they were voting for many of the same things that they were voting for when they voted for Bernie Sanders. They just became increasingly frustrated,
right.
because from the time Obama came into office, you had an economic recession, and you had really all of the wealth that was created in the recovery going then to the top 0.1%, essentially, like right. 95% of the wealth, And so really what happened is that for people, for working people, they have not recovered to the level at which they were in 2007 and before, but rather they've reached a new plateau that's lower. and now there's kind of nowhere to go. There's nowhere further down to go.
Right.
And it gets to something else that you said, which is that unless we as the left offer the American people an alternative,
Exactly.
the right is offering, people an alternative, a way out of this kind of system,
Right.
a way out of neoliberalism,
Right.
a way out of corporate domination.
Right.
But until we as the left represent a genuine alternative and escape from that, people will always take the right route.
Exactly.
They will take the right-wing route. And so it's incumbent upon us now to create an alternative, to show, that no, actually, there is a party that does, represent all those issues that Bernie Sanders ran on, has ever existed. In fact, if you were to distribute wealth equally in the United States, every family of four would have $200,000, would have an annual income of $200,000.
Exactly.
So it's not a question of there being sufficient wealth. It's a question of that it's becoming more and more concentrated in a minuscule number of hands.
Exactly.
At the turn of the 20th century, when you had robber barons in the United States who dominated each industry, you had Carnegie Mellon, and you had Rockefeller, and you had J.P. Morgan. And it was a time when there were basically no labor rights, and Standard Oil had a 95% monopoly, on oil market, and so that was the Gilded Age. Amazingly, we have surpassed those levels of inequality, from Gilded Age levels of inequality. Now, like Oxfam says, there are 5 people who have as much wealth as the bottom 3.5 billion.
Exactly.
And so in a lot of ways, we never moved past feudalism. We just kind of recreated it, and we have a new royalty, this kind of capitalist investor royalty.
And I've seen this happen in, my generation. I believe has been luckier than this generation. This generation has been really messed up. What's the name?
Oh, well, the name and the platform for the new party will be determined at a founding convention that will gather new party members from across the country, where we'll make those decisions. We'll pick new bylaws. We'll create a fully democratic structure, as well as the platform and leadership and everything that the party stands for.
Exactly.
And we will make sure, it's really imperative to design it differently from the Democratic and Republican parties.
Right.
This isn't just creating a party that, is in their image. This is about totally reinventing the concept of a party. So I think of it as creating kind of a movement party. And so the progressive movement, and most Americans, more than above 60% consider themselves progressive on the issues.
Right.
They might not use the term to describe themselves, but when you ask them about the issues, they check all of those things that Bernie Sanders ran on.
Exactly.
And so it's about then creating a party that stands for all of those things as well. That's that. There is so much energy right now for an independent party, and there's such a great consensus, around the fact that we need a new party, record high consensus, and also tremendous consensus on the progressive issues. But now the question is, all right, how do we put that force together into a kind of viable vehicle that can exert itself electorally and actually propel progressives to power?
Right.
Because something that we've seen, a dynamic that we've seen with the Democratic Party, is that the more, there's kind of this dilemma that's emerged in the progressive movement, as we try to change the country. And that's that the more progressive that Americans become, the more they see through the Democratic Party and realize that it isn't progressive. And so the more they leave the Democratic Party. And that's what we've seen, for the past decade and a half. And that's what we've seen, in fact, since even since Bernie Sanders, and other progressives embarked on this kind of attempt to reform the Democratic Party, is that not even Bernie has been able to keep people from leaving. And so people keep. And so
it's kind of sad because, there's this big picture of Bernie Sanders, like him standing, and there's this background, like it's in Sacramento. I was in that crowd, okay?
Bernie tried, we thought, okay, the way to defeat Trump is to rather attempt to, bring this energy that we've built up back into the Democratic Party,
Yeah.
And by endorsing Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
And when he did that, just like you say, he was turning out tens of thousands of people just a few months before. And then after he endorsed Hillary, he was bringing out 100, 150.
If he's lucky.
Right, if he's lucky.
I got in line. I left work early, okay?
Yeah.
And get in line for like 3 hours to see Bernie Sanders talk, okay? In the heat of summer,
That's
right? May, all right? I mean, and after that, it's like, sorry.
So that shows that it really is, it's about the issues. And
Exactly.
it's about, people being fed up with the way things are working.
It's not working.
And so that's why, when we came together in D.C. at the Convergence Conference,
right.
We had hundreds of progressives and dozens of leading activists and thinkers, the progressive movement. And we came together to discuss this question of, okay, well, what can be done at this point, and where can we find consensus?
Okay, now speaking of where we're going, so I think people are ready, right? How do you get people involved now? Like, because people are excited. This is exciting. This is a game changer for the history of America, basically. So is there like a website they can go to? Can they give you money? Can they volunteer? I mean, these are the things that people are saying, okay, let's do this. We're ready. What do you say to that?
They can go to Draft Bernie for people. So it's draftbernie.org. They can visit us there.
Right.
They can sign up to volunteer.
Okay.
And they can help sustain
locally, like people in San Francisco, right? What do you say to the people in San Francisco? How do they get involved?
Oh, well, yes. Visit our website and sign up to volunteer there. And then we will be in touch with you.
Okay. And we have a local Berniecrats group here, too.
Yes, and we have also a Draft Bernie for a People's Party chapter, though we voted on our call last week to change our name, and so we'll be changing our name to better reflect that we're now a movement for a People's Party.
Yeah, People's Party. It's
exactly.
people. The people wants a party, their own party.
I like it. And now, so coming out of the conference, we had these 3 points of agreement that I think most people could agree on, most of the speakers, and our mission really kind of started to take focus there, our new mission.
Right.
And so the first one was that we need a people's party.
Exactly.
We need a new party, a mass party of the left that in order to actually realize our progressive vision.
Right.
And the second point of agreement was that new party has to be independent from corporate money and influence.
Right, exactly.
And so that it doesn't get reeled back into the system. And then the third point of agreement was that no existing organization or party on the progressive left is capable of doing that alone. It's a task that and so that leads us to our new mission of coalition building on the left to build a mass party, a people's party, because that's what's required, is that now we're all in different places and we're divided, and we're split among 1,000 different groups and organizations and parties. But if we can focus our energy, we are a majority. And so we can actually take on and dismantle this two-party system and replace it with a genuine people's party.
God, this is so incredible and so exciting.
Absolutely. Come visit us on the website, Draft Bernie for a People's Party. We're in the process of picking a new name, developing a platform that will represent the coalition for this new party. And we have weekly national calls on Thursdays at 9:30 Eastern. And you can find the link to sign up on our website. And so come and join us. You can also find it on our Facebook page, Draft Bernie for a People's Party. So come join us in those conversations, because we're planning something really exciting now. We're planning what this party of the future is going to look like. And we'd really like to have everyone involved.
Great. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. And again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're very excited about what's going on in the country with the leadership of people like Nick Brana, Cornel West, just to name a couple. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, and good night.
Thanks, Myrna.
Thank you.